let's start with what exactly is the issue that has troubled many people. Let's come straight, cut the chase. December 12th, Collegium of the Supreme Court, comprising the Chief Justice, Ranjan Gogoi, yourself, 3 other judges, recommends the elevation of Justice Pradeep Nandrajog, Chief Justice of the Rajasthan High Court, Justice Rajendra Menon, Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court to the Supreme Court. January 10th, new collegium minus you, plus Justice Arun Mishra, now part of it, holds its first meeting, instead decides to elevate 2 other judges, Justice Dinesh Maheshwari and Justice Sanjeev Khanna. The details of your 12th December meeting are not even put up. The resolution is not even put up, uploaded on the website of the Supreme Court. How do you see it? Is it almost that we want to get rid of Madan Lokur and then we'll appoint new judges? That's the impression that many people are getting.
Well, I don't have that impression. Sorry, I don't have that impression at all. Well, there was a meeting on the 12th of December, undoubtedly, and certain decisions were taken, and that is reflected in the resolution of 10th of January. Now, what happened between 12th of December and 10th of January, I'm not privy to it at all. So really, I can't say what happened.
But does it leave you disappointed as a senior judge that decisions taken by the collegium, presumably through a process of consultation, are not as per practice put up on the website? Instead, they are reversed with only a cryptic line, additional material that has come to light. Were you informed of any of this additional material? Were you kept out of the loop?
I was not informed of any additional material, no.
So you were kept completely out of the loop. Is it true that you asked the Chief Justice to upload that resolution on the 13th of December?
No, there's no reason to ask anybody to upload the resolution taken by the collegium. I mean, that's it's something that is done. I mean, there's you see, the thing is, there's no practice that is laid down. No standard operating procedure or something that is laid down. So once a resolution is passed, I would expect in the normal course that it would be put up on the website.
So does it leave you disappointed? Does it leave you disappointed as a senior jurist to find a decision that you've taken being almost overruled, if I may use the word, in the manner that it was, in complete opaqueness, with no transparency whatsoever?
It does disappoint me that it was not put up on the website, yes.
It does disappoint you?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Does it also suggest that you fear that, that there could have been motives?
No.
Are you going to attribute motives?
No,
Are you going
to...
Have you tried to seek an explanation from the Chief Justice of the country?
That's not my job, no. That's not my job. A decision has been taken and in the normal course it should have been put up. It was not put up. I'm disappointed. Why it was not put up is not my business.
It's not your business, but it's certainly, presumably, since you yourself say that judicial officers should be held to levels of accountability, it certainly concerns members of the bar, it concerns colleagues in the bench. Other judges have now written to the Chief Justice. The manner in which it was done, is that at the heart of the problem, that the institution remains trapped in opaqueness? What happens at that collegium meeting when 5 judges sit, the 5 wise men and women sit, is not known to the wider world when it should. It affects the careers of many people. It seems a totally subjective process. Do you agree with me?
Well, what happens at the collegium is something which is done in confidence. And if I have a discussion with you, assuming you're a member of the collegium, it's obviously something which is in confidence. And I'm not going to betray anybody's trust and say that, well, this is what we discussed or this is not what we discussed. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of confidence. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to betray anybody's trust in this. So we take certain decisions, and once we take certain decisions, well, they have to be uploaded.
Which is exactly it. You took a decision, it is not uploaded. 2 new judges are brought in. I'm sorry to persist. I get a sense that you feel let down. Justice Lokur, you are now the outsider. You can say, you can speak with a little bit more freedom than you did before the 31st of December.
I am telling you that I am disappointed. Yes, I am. I am disappointed that it was not uploaded. Yes.
Which,
right.
which is precisely the point.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, even after the NJSC judgment,
Yeah.
you're virtually back to a square one process where,
Right.
the notion of consultation, the notion of criteria
Yeah.
is left sufficiently ambiguous. Today, if Justice Nandrajog was here or Justice Menon was here, they could well turn around and ask, what is it that where did I fail? What is this additional material that has been provided? Should the Chief Justice of India not put that material out in the public domain if it is so serious to actually effectively bypass those two judges or overrule their appointment? Surely such material is in the public interest and must be put out. How long will the judges, almost sort of hide behind the MOP? Or hide behind the NJSC judgment?
No, it's not a question of hiding behind the judgment. If there is some material, I suppose somebody has to be trusted on dealing with the material, isn't it?
But should it be put out in the public domain in your view?
I don't know. I'm not sure. You see, it depends on what kind of a material it is. Supposing it is something which is defamatory.
Yes.
Should the whole world know that, it's defamatory? It could be something which is not defamatory but may not be good enough to make that person a judge of the High Court.
Which is why the suspicion is that the Chief Justice was simply waiting for you to retire.
Yeah, okay, that's for you to decide, yeah? Not for me. I don't know what the material was, so what can I say? I can't say anything about that.
Which is why we come back to the manner of transfer and appointments. Even at tea today, we had a couple of senior lawyers come to me and tell me about specific cases of specific lawyers whom the government wants to transfer out and others who they want to retain. The entire NJSC judgment therefore comes under scrutiny. You were among those who ruled in favor of the continuance of the system. There will be others today who will say, why not get honest and say the collegium system as it exists has failed? We need to find a better way to appoint and transfer judges. Do you at least accept that maybe the time has come to look at the way judges are transferred and appointed?
Well, I wouldn't say the collegium system has failed. I think that's a very, very strong word. I don't think it has failed. But yes, like every system, it requires tweaking. All right. Now, in the case of this Justice Karnan, for example, Justice Chalmeshwar and Justice Gogoi said that we need to revisit the method of appointment and selection of judges.
Yes.
There are things that happen, It's not that, the procedure is cast in stone and that's it. I mean, situations arise. We are dealing with human beings. We are not dealing with, machines. So things happen and, certainly it needs tweaking. Yeah, it does.
Tell us how. I mean, I will persist with this. What happens inside a collegium? For all of us who are not privileged to be part of your collegium, tell us what actually happens inside. Is there intense debate or is it simply that sifarish pe chalta hai?
No. There's no sifarish in this. Well, there is a discussion.
There's no element of nepotism?
I don't think so.
No element of influence peddling in the years that you were in the collegium?
No. Not while I was
No attempts made by whoever is the chief at the time to ensure that people who he or she may be close to get the benefit?
Well,
if there are all things being equal?
It's like this. I think you have to understand a few things. If there is a suggestion that is given by the Chief Justice that I would like, or I think that somebody should be appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court, or that somebody should be transferred out, well, we discuss it. Why should that person be appointed? Why should that person be transferred out? Should that person be transferred out? Should that person be appointed? So there is a discussion. Yeah, there is a discussion. It's not that because the Chief Justice says that, listen, this is to be done, therefore everybody agrees. It doesn't work like that. There is a discussion. There is a healthy discussion. There are agreements. There are disagreements. If the Chief Justice says, I think certain particular person should be appointed, well, I may disagree, and he may accept my point of view. If he doesn't, well, I'm entitled to say, as a member of the collegium, that, listen, I don't agree with you.
But how would you, if you had an opportunity now to revisit the collegium system and think of a better way in which public confidence, the confidence of the bench and the bar was restored in the manner in which transfers and appointments are being made, what according to you would be a better system than the one that exists today? Today it seems the primacy of the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice seems to have a certain element of primacy.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The Chief Justice is the first amongst equals, right? There's no difficulty about that. So the discussion is initiated by the Chief Justice, right? And as one of the equals, I am entitled to disagree with the Chief Justice like anybody else. It's not that because the Chief Justice says so, therefore I must agree with him. No, it doesn't work like that.
But should there be no accountability of the collegium at all? What is the accountability today of the collegium? What is the accountability?
What is the kind of accountability that you're looking at?
I'm giving you I come back to the latest instance. Additional material, according to the resolution drafted on January 10th, has been responsible for 2 judges being passed over and 2 other judges being appointed. You were part of the collegium. Either that additional material possibly was available before December 31st. If it was, surely you should have been informed of it.
Right.
You are telling me you were never informed of any additional material.
Right.
Therefore, the additional material, very conveniently, it would seem, came between the 1st and the 10th. If that material has come, should we be satisfied with just what has been said in that resolution, or should I or any member of the bar or bench not have the right to ask, please put that material in the public domain? And if it is serious enough, please tell us how serious it is. I mean, I'm just saying there seems to be a complete lack of transparency in the process. So where is the accountability when there is no transparency, sir?
Yeah, you see, again, we are coming back to the same thing, you know. What is the kind of material that was there before the collegium on the 10th of January? You don't know, right? I assume you don't know. Yeah? No. I don't know. Now, supposing it was something which is incorrect.
Yes.
And defamatory, right? The collegium believes it to be correct.
Yes.
Okay? And it's defamatory. Do you expect them to put it out and say that, listen, there is this defamatory material?
But it leaves the space for a lot of gossip, for a lot of innuendo, which is the last thing people at the highest, in the country's highest judiciary need. I mean, let's be honest, that's really what is triggering off a lot of the there's a lot of speculation over the manner in which judges at the moment are being appointed and transferred. I was just given an example just now of an advocate who was to be brought to the Allahabad High Court as a judge. 3 times you've sent his recommendations to the government. The government apparently has returned it 3 times. Again, we don't know why. In the case of Justice Joseph, where you had a conflict with you were part of the collegium, you're conflicted with the government returned it back twice. Eventually, he was elevated. But the manner in which it happened, don't you think it undermines public faith in the institution?
Yeah, this is precisely what I'm saying, that there is a need to bring about a change, right? And this, what you have mentioned, is one of the examples for bringing about a change. Now, the memorandum of procedure, for example, is silent on many of these things, okay? Let me give you an example. It says that if the High Court Collegium makes a recommendation and says that, we think that so-and-so should be appointed as a judge, and the state government does not respond, all right, or does not act upon that recommendation within a period of 6 weeks, then the Government of India, the Law Ministry or the Department of Justice, whoever is concerned, can proceed on the assumption that they have no objection. Okay? Now, supposing the Government of India or the Law Ministry or the Department of Justice does not proceed on that assumption, what happens? And this has happened in several cases, where the files have remained pending with the government for months together. So what is the sanction, so to speak, for inactivity? Supposing the government sits on the file for months together. It sat on the file of Justice K.M. Joseph for months together.
That's right.
What do? The memorandum of procedure is silent on that. Now, what do you expect anybody to do? Perhaps just, maybe the Chief Justice to ring up to find out what's happened? Apart from that, what else? They will say, yeah, the file is with us, we'll process it.
Has that been your experience, that when convenient, the government will sit on a file? Let's be again honest now. You're outside the
Yeah,
system.
yeah, no,
Particularly what
it's a-
we've seen in the last
no,
year or two.
Mr.
The government
yeah.
sits on files when it suits them.
Well, I don't know whether it suits them or not, but everybody knows that, the government has been sitting on some files. It's a matter of public knowledge. It's not something to do with my being a member of the collegium or not. Everybody knows it. Files have remained pending for a couple of months. Everybody knows it.
So what should be the role of the government then?
Yeah, so therefore, there has to be some mechanism, if you want to improve the system, and I think the system needs to be improved, there has to be some mechanism by which the timelines which are laid down must be strictly adhered to, or else, it should be taken as a consent. Right? That's one way of looking at it. Or maybe there should be some discussions or something between whoever is there in the government and members of the collegium or the Chief Justice or somebody.
Because the other
There
view
has to
would
be,
be that the
yeah.
government doesn't want inconvenient judges but would prefer pliable judges.
Could
Because
be.
that's again, it's about
Could
how
be.
the public perceives it. It's
Yeah,
about
could be.
perception.
Yeah, certainly could be, yeah.
You accept that.
It could be.
That's the perception
No,
out
it's
there.
not, it's not a question of my accepting a perception or not. I mean, if people have a perception, they have a perception. But it could be that, the government might sit on a file because it doesn't want a particular person. It's possible.
Is that
And-
what happened with Justice Joseph?
I don't know. I don't know whether the government wanted him or didn't want him. Ultimately, he was appointed. It was only a question of time.
You had to literally push them.
Well, I don't know. I can't say that.
The reason again I come back, and this is where, therefore the people, there will be those who will say maybe the NGHAC majority judgment was flawed. You and others seem to refer almost to suggest as if appointment of judges is part of the basic structure of the
No,
Constitution.
yeah,
There
it
are
is.
others who would suggest that that is hardly the basic structure of the Constitution. We need a wider process of consultation before appointing judges.
Yeah, sorry.
And maybe that could include the executive.
Sorry. I have said that a view has been taken in the NJSC judgment. I think that the view is correct, that there must be an independent judiciary, right? I also think that the collegium system is, in the existing circumstances, the best system, but I also say that the existing collegium system needs some tweaking. What is that tweaking is something that all of us need to discuss. We can't just say that, listen, because there has been a problem on one occasion, therefore you throw the collegium system out. All right? There have been problems in the pre-collegium system as well. Right? So you throw that out. You bring in the collegium system, you throw that out. You bring in a third system. Something happens, you throw that out. How long is this going to go on?
You're saying define the memorandum of procedure more clearly,
Yeah.
specify the criteria, have a time limit. The law minister of the country cannot simply sit on a file, and if he sits on a file beyond the
Nobody-
prescribed period of time,
Nobody can sit
it'll
on
be
a
taken.
file.
Nobody can sit on a file. It will be taken as consent.
That's one way of looking at it. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, certainly. Nobody can sit on a file, and that includes, not only the government, it also includes the judiciary.
I'll come back to this in a moment, but the entire controversy was triggered in a way, not this specific controversy, but the role of judges. When you had that historic quote unquote press conference in January of 2018. In hindsight, what did that press conference achieve? Was it simply about questioning the authority of the Chief Justice to be the sole master of the roster? Was it about administration of justice, or was it about something more? 13 months later or 12 months later, I'm not sure what you really achieved with that press conference. Was it really worth it?
Was it worth it?
I'm asking you, sir.
Well, I think it was worth it. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
What did you achieve? What was the intent and what did you achieve?
Well, what did we achieve? I don't know. I can't specify what exactly we achieved, but I'm sure we achieved something. We must have achieved something. I mean, some little bit of openness, a little bit of openness in the system. Yeah.
You just put the Chief Justice on notice. I mean, let's be honest, administration of justice, the manner in which cases are assigned, there is a sense that this has been, there have been previous Chief Justices who've also faced similar criticism. What is it that in this particular instance led you to take what many believe, the Fali Narimans and the Soli Sorabji said, if you had to sort it out, sort it within the confines of the court. 4 judges should not have gone out in the public. What would you like to tell the Soli Sorabjis and the Fali Narimans of the world?
Well, I don't want to tell them anything.
Why not?
But no, why should I? But we did have a discussion with the Chief Justice about some issues, and when we did not get a positive response time and again, not once, not twice, but well, more than 2 or 3 times, well, we thought that it would be appropriate to let people know that we have a different perception from what the Chief Justice has.
You're telling us something important. What you're saying is that this was not a one-off. This was something that was building up over a period of time. You did make the attempt of reaching out to the Chief Justice, Justice Mishra then. He didn't, in a sense, accept perhaps your grievances, so you thought there was no choice but to go to the court of the public.
Not to the court of the public, but if you remember, we circulated a letter which had been sent to the Chief Justice.
Yes.
Right? That contains everything. Okay? So when we when we wrote that letter, well, we voiced our views, and that letter, if I remember correctly, was sometime in October. It was in October, and well, we came out in January. So there was time a little bit before October, then October, November, December, and January.
How have things changed? Because you
It has brought about some openness, yes.
It has brought about openness?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, certainly. Yeah, it has. It has.
You know, the argument that critics of your action make is that if you really had to go and take this extreme step, according to some, of going and addressing a press conference, then go on the real issues, go on judicial corruption, expose the corruption of the judges. You know, to go on administration of judges,
right.
administration of justice
give me
is
the
the
names.
low-hanging fruit.
All right, give me the names of those judges who are corrupt. Give me the names. You're talking about corruption of judges. Give me the names.
I give you the names in this gathering. You will, your fellow judges will throw the contempt of court, which again comes back to it, of judicial accountability.
1 minute,
Let's
sir.
be honest.
1 minute.
We've been
one
terri-
minute.
I'll give you an
Truth.
example,
No,
sir.
1
A
minute.
few years ago, we came very close
Listen,
to
truth-
stinging
truth-
a judge of the Supreme Court.
Truth is a good defense. So if you have the name of any judge who's corrupt, tell us.
You see, I will leave that to Prashant Bhushan at some stage to take up. Because I am petrified at the idea.
Your court has sent a recommendation for his impeachment.
Sorry?
Justice Shukla of the Allahabad High Court. Your court has recommended his impeachment. What happened to that?
I have no idea. I have no idea about that.
The then Chief Justice himself.
I think if I remember correctly, this is what my impression is, that there is an in-house inquiry, right? Now, that in-house inquiry has to be dealt with by the Chief Justice. Okay, so I'm not aware of what was the result of that in-house inquiry, and if the in-house inquiry is concluded, I believe it is concluded. I have no idea of what the Chief Justice has done about it. I have no idea.
Prashant, do you want to take up the challenge? It is being suggested here by Justice Lokur, name the judges, right? That's effectively what you're saying. You must name the judges.
For example, there is a recently publicized case of Chief Justice of a High Court who is being considered for elevation to the Supreme Court. The reports in the media and the documents that I have seen suggest that a then sitting judge of the Supreme Court was asked for his opinion about that particular judge. And in his opinion, he said that, look, he appears to have acquired these 6 properties after his being appointed a judge, which appear to be of considerable value. There are very serious allegations that he has undervalued them. They need to be properly valued. He also said that there are serious allegations of his taking cash for bail. Here are 9 orders that he has passed on bail which do not appear to be above board. this matter also needs to be examined, and there are other serious allegations which need to be investigated. Now, the point is that there is nothing which shows that any investigation took place on those allegations made by a sitting judge of the Supreme Court. And yet, we learn from the media that that judge is being considered for appointment to the Supreme Court. Now, it's not a question of mostly one does not have evidence or hard evidence of corruption of a judge. One occasionally gets some evidence sometimes, but when no investigation takes place, when people make complaints and no investigation takes place on that, that raises very serious questions.
You know, are we saying therefore that this entire system by which, let's assume that there are allegations of corruption, and then you've got to go through a long drawn out process that will eventually, after investigation, possibly lead to impeachment. And we've seen all too few in this country happen. Do you believe that that system also needs to be looked at? That we need perhaps a swifter, more transparent system that doesn't prevent judges from doing their work honestly, but also punishes the dishonest. I mean, let's be honest, hundreds of judges across this country, there must be several of them, sir, who aren't of the highest integrity. And yet, you know, they perhaps get away. Do you believe the system needs to be reviewed for looking at cases of judicial corruption rather than leaving it for gossips in the corridor of the courts?
Yeah. If there is evidence of corruption or strong, not necessarily evidence in that sense, but enough to show that a person is not honest, there should be a system, and we need a faster system, certainly.
So let me be more direct. Do judges protect their own?
No, I don't think so.
No, let's look at the specifics. Do you believe that judges protect their own? And therefore even that system needs to be reviewed in some form.
You know, I don't know what you mean by protect their own. I mean, if a person is guilty, he's guilty. Where is the question of protecting somebody who's guilty? Right? If the person is innocent, he's innocent. He doesn't need any protection because he's innocent. Now, what you are saying, I suppose, I don't know what you're trying to say. What you are saying is that if in a gray area, perhaps the judges are trying to protect somebody.
No, what I'm saying is that there are numerous, Prashant Bhushan raises one particular instance, but over the years, there have been several such instances. In some cases, you're right, the evidence may not be of 100%, but is surely worth pursuing and investigating. Do you believe this process of investigating a judge who may be accused of corruption is pursued with the due seriousness, or is there an attempt at the end of the day to play it down, to not take it as seriously as it should?
Okay, let me tell you about my own personal experience.
Yes.
There was an allegation against a particular judge of corruption, right? I happened to be a member of that in-house committee to look into the allegation of corruption, and we did find that the judge was corrupt, or corrupt in the sense of dishonest. So we did make a recommendation to the Chief Justice. So it's not that these things don't happen. Now, what the Chief Justice did after that, I don't know, because that was entirely for the Chief Justice to decide. But if there is some material that a person is corrupt or believed to be corrupt or believed to be dishonest or believed to lack integrity, there is a procedure, and I can't tell you offhand how long it took us for that inquiry, but I think the inquiry was conducted fairly fast.
The proximity of judges to the government, sir.
Yeah.
There was a belief that judges kept away from government and government officers and their functions to the maximum extent possible. Now there's a sense that some of those walls are being bridged. The Prime Minister attended, I think not too long ago, a dinner that the judges throw. You invite him by convention, but the Prime Minister doesn't attend. Not only did he attend, but apparently he asked you to open the doors of court number 1 and wanted to see how the court proceedings take place. Do you believe that the distance must be complete and total between government and the judiciary?
I don't know what you mean by, distance should be complete. I mean, are you suggesting that I should not see the face of the Prime Minister?
No, there are photographs of some judges who attend, let's say, the wedding of a politician's son or daughter,
You know,
and then the photographs come out.
Listen.
Should the judge be a hermit completely? Once you become a judge of the Supreme Court, in particular.
I don't think a judge should be a hermit. I don't think this ivory tower business is correct, that a judge should be in an ivory tower. If judges are going to be in an ivory tower, you don't know what the hell is going on at the ground level. So you can't expect a judge to be a hermit. And why should a judge be a hermit? You know, on the one hand, you talk about, judges being human beings. And on the other hand, you say he should be a hermit, or he should be sitting in an ivory tower, or he should not know what's happening. I mean, it can't be like that, you know.
The doors of the Supreme Court opening specifically for the Prime Minister?
That's perfectly okay. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. I think you're reading far too much into it. You must know that this was in a conference in which judges, chief justices of some other countries had come. There was a dinner. I don't think there's anything wrong in inviting the Prime Minister for a public dinner. I don't think there's anything wrong. The Prime Minister of India gives a farewell to the Chief Justice of India, the outgoing Chief Justice, and a welcome to the incoming Chief Justice. The President does it. Now, are you trying to say that we should not have, this sort of a thing? I mean, that's stretching it too far. You know, I'm sorry, but that's stretching it too far.
Post-retirement assignments.
Yeah.
That are, that seem to be the practice. Do you believe that judges must accept appointments almost immediately? You know, we've even had judges becoming governors, chief justices now becoming governors. Do you believe a line needs to be drawn somewhere?
Yeah, it does.
As to what it does need to be drawn?
Certainly.
What should be the line?
Well, it depends on a variety of factors. For example, you have the National Human Rights Commission, all right? The law says, a law enacted by Parliament, says that the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission will be a retired Chief Justice of India.
Mm-hmm.
Now, supposing all the Chief Justices say that, listen, we are not going to become chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, do you think that body can function? The law says that the chairman of the Central Administrative Tribunal will be a retired Chief Justice of a High Court. Supposing all the Chief Justices of all the High Courts say we're not going to become, presidents or chairman or whatever it is of the Central Administrative Tribunal, do you think it's going to work? So you have laws, right? And if the law requires that a person, that a retired judge or a retired Chief Justice should be a member of a particular body, change the law. You know, you can't say that, oh, because you become a member, therefore there's something wrong with that.
No, but governors, members of parliament,
Yeah,
the kind of posts that are at the,
yeah.
would you accept if
I
the
would not.
government gave you a governorship?
I would not. I would not.
If they made you a Rajya Sabha nominated member?
I would not. No.
The reason I'm asking you this is
there
also...
a rumor that I'm going to become a member of
No,
the
no, sir. No. The reason I'm asking you this is because look at the number of cases with a distinct political flavor that the judges have to, in a sense, deal with. Look at the Mandir Masjid dispute which is coming up, sir. Look at other sensitive cases that have come up in the past. Dare I say some contentious. I know there will be people who will still ask a question as to the stand that you took on the Birla Sahara diaries, that the judiciary took at the time. Or the Kaliko Pool case, the Arunachal Chief Minister's widow who came before the Supreme Court. I'm just asking, given the nature of these cases, that by their very nature, look at the CBI Director's appointment case, sir. Chief Justice Gogoi has suddenly recused himself. Now that leads to questions being asked as to why he chose to do what he did.
Why?
Because the same Chief Justice, sir, chose to adjudicate on Alok Verma's case. But when it comes to Nageshwar Rao, suddenly says, I want to recuse myself because I am responsible for I'm part of the committee which will appoint the next CBI director. That argument could well have been used when Alok Verma's case came before him.
All right, supposing it wasn't. What are you suggesting? That he should have heard the case and taken up a meeting tomorrow?
No, I'm saying he could have recused himself from the original Alok Verma hearing.
He did not. All right, now therefore what? Therefore what?
So my point is...
Therefore he should hear the case and also be in the selection committee.
But it's very interesting, sir. The selection committee was as a result of a judgment passed by the late Justice Verma. And we've seen with successive CBI directors, all of whom have been appointed by a collegium of which the Chief Justice is a part. Each of them, at least 3 of the last 4 have been in some way or the other accused of serious corruption. What does it say about the system when the leader of the opposition, the Prime Minister, and the Chief Justice of this country cannot appoint men of integrity to the highest post, or against whom then subsequent allegations come out? I'm just wondering whether the Chief Justices of this country are, or senior judges, want to spread their in a sense, their writ well beyond the judicial domain into what is essentially a political domain, and thereby find themselves getting into one controversy after the other. What does the Chief Justice now do in a situation like the CBI director?
I don't know what he will do, and I can't advise him. No.
No, I'm looking at judicial overreach, sir. Do you believe that in certain areas judges should simply stay out? Whether it's the
Of course.
whether it's the Rafael case, possibly.
No. Well, listen, I'm not talking about any specific case. Please don't, get into that.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
in
talking about-
generalities.
Yeah, in generally, I think the judges, the judiciary has to stay out of the political thicket, and that's very well accepted. It's not only something from India, but it's all over the world. Stay away from the political thicket.
Do you feel in? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So you will have, for example, in the United States, that Bush versus Gore, for example, right? There was a lot of controversy. Now, it may have been a simple case of, whatever that ballot and all that was. It may have been political. I don't know. I'm sure those people know, but I don't know. But yeah, if it comes to the political thicket, judges have to stay out. That's not their job. Judges are not politicians.
But look at whatever they do with this Mandir Masjid case, sir, will have a political implication.
Yeah, listen,
Should they have stayed out?
I'm not talking about any particular case. I don't want to go into any particular case. There are cases pending. I don't want to go
You're
into
even
all.
administrating cricket and making a mess of it. The chief, the committee of administrators has messed up Indian cricket. I'm just wondering whether the Supreme Court needs to take a step back, sir. Is this the time for the Supreme Court to take a step back and say, let's focus on the core issues where justice is involved, rather than get involved in sundry other activities where really you don't need a judicial
You see,
review?
I'm repeating what I have said, that I do not want to discuss any particular case, whether it's the BCCI or whatever. I don't want to discuss any particular case, but yes, there are occasions when judges have gone beyond what is required, right? So on those occasions, they certainly do need to step back, certainly. I think it's with every branch of democracy. The executive sometimes oversteps. Okay, so the judiciary strikes down the actions of the judiciary. Parliament sometimes oversteps, or the legislature sometimes oversteps. The courts say that it is unconstitutional. Now, to say that it's overreach in that sense, well, if you're using the word overreach as a very strong term, I don't think that's right. The legislature can make a mistake. It can misunderstand, its powers. The executive can misunderstand its powers. The judiciary can misunderstand its powers. But to say that, well, because you have misunderstood your powers, therefore it's overreach, I don't think that's a fair criticism.
Have you retired on December 31st with a sense of feeling content
Oh, yes.
about the state of the judiciary? You passed remarkable judgments in the context of the environment, the Juvenile Justice Act. You made a genuine effort to sort of reach out to those who need justice most. But do you believe the system, the institution, is functioning as well as it should? Or are you depressed when you read the newspaper headlines and the editorial opinion about the state of the judiciary?
No, I'm not depressed. But like I said in the beginning, I said that certain things need tweaking, right? And we need to discuss those things. It's not only the collegium, but in justice delivery, the entire system of justice delivery needs tweaking. What about appointments? Should we have 20,000 judges, or should we have 50,000 judges, or should we have 1 lakh judges? I think we need to discuss these things. And unfortunately, we are not discussing many of these things.
Speedier justice.
Speedier justice, we are not discussing it. We've got cases which are pending for many years. how do we expedite justice delivery? How do we make it more accessible to the people? You know, we need to discuss all that. So I think there are a large number of issues which need to be discussed, where things need to be tweaked, and I think we should get on with the job. Yeah.
I'll-
And if we make a mistake, step back. Yeah.
I'll come back for a few closing comments, but let's open it up and get questions. If there is a mic around, then it'll be easier. We won't make it a cross-examination, don't worry. Why don't we start this side? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir. This is about 10% reservation EWS category.
I'm not answering that.
Okay, let's get into, yes, Anjali.
Rajdeep, if you just don't mind,
Yes.
we would, there are quite a few distinguished senior counsels
Yes,
present
please,
here,
please.
as well as members of the press, both of which have had sufficient access or get occasions of access to Justice Lokur. There are other junior members of the bar here, advocates, non-lawyers, who would never ever have an opportunity to ask a question to...
Please identify them, very good.
So before we start with the questions from the press and the senior members of the bar, may I just request the junior members of the bar, non-seniors, if they can ask, but please don't ask any questions with regards to existing cases. Please don't ask any questions that would be inappropriate. But please make the best of this opportunity to ask a question to Justice Lokur, because since the time I've started my judicial career, he's the one who's been asking questions to me. And I'm sure that many of us would be around here, so please get a chance to, ask something.
And we've
back.
assured him it's not a press conference, so the
Yes.
press has been kept out.
So
Okay,
the
that's fair enough.
first few questions from those.
Make one exception for me. I'm not a junior member, but exception.
Yeah, but go ahead.
But Ms. Jaising is the exception to most of the rules. Yes, so anybody else?
Yes,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
you're the
And-
press.
Actually a member of the press, so.
Your press, no, please.
No,
Anybody
we-
who's not a member,
Yeah, go ahead.
Paras,
We want to get young lawyers to ask questions.
Good evening, sir.
introduce yourself first.
Sir, this is Paras, and I am 1 year old. I am 1 year old in the bar, and I would like to ask President Secretariat confirm me that yes, we have indeed received a letter from the then CGI Mishra seeking impeachment of Justice Narayan Shukla of Allahabad High Court. So I am confirming you that yes, it is confirmed that he had indeed written a letter seeking impeachment of Justice Narayan Shukla of Allahabad High Court because in-house inquiry indicted him. It has been a year, but Government of India is sitting over it, and it has not even circulated a letter to the Member of Parliament. So suggest us what is the way out.
I don't know.
That's a pretty long question and you met with a proper answer, one word. Yeah, anyone else? Someone from the other side of the press cameras, this entire row, anyone else?
I have a question. I'm sorry, Sunil. Sir, my question is this. You said the post-retirement assignments, and there are statutory commitments. But how these post-retirement assignees are chosen, in the sense how they are selected? Because we have got so many chief justices. I'm told that this offer is not given to many of those people. Like so many other posts, this offer is not given to many of the chief justices. So how this selection takes place?
I don't know, but my impression is, it's only an impression. My impression is that the concerned ministry would write to the Chief Justice of India if it's something to do with the government of India, or if it is something to do with the state, then it would write to the Chief Justice of the High Court, saying that there is a vacancy of a member of the State Administrative Tribunal or something, and would you like to recommend some person? This is what my impression is. When I was Chief Justice of Guwahati or Andhra Pradesh, I never got any such request, so I can't be sure about it. But I would imagine that this would be the procedure, and then the Chief Justice would make a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah. There's one gentleman right behind.
Yeah.
Yes. This right behind the
here,
cameras. Yes. Go ahead, Darpan.
I am Aditya Prasad this side. Now,
Yeah.
I just wanted to know why judges are, so unapproachable by commoners like us. And I'll just add to that, is that there was a situation at the end of last month where the newspapers have reported that the Meghalaya rescue operation was hindered because there were no pumps to take out the water. So we tried to move a petition during the vacation. And of course the vacation registrar said that it's not urgent in our opinion. And therefore we wrote to you on an email to Mr. Sharma. And of course I also wrote to the Chief Justice. But nothing happened. And the next day we were told that your mail went to the Secretary General, and he also just responded by saying that nothing can happen on this because it's not urgent. So in a situation like this, where does a common person or a lawyer go?
You know, I think if you go back into history, there was a time when letters were sent to judges, and judges then took up those cases as public interest litigation. Then I think it was decided, I can say about the Delhi High Court, and I believe it's the same that applies to all other high courts as well, including the Supreme Court, that if a letter like this comes, then it has to be placed before the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice has a committee, right? I was a member of the committee in the Supreme Court, where a letter would come. I didn't get more than maybe 2 or 3 letters to see whether that letter could be considered as a PIL. Okay, so there is a procedure that is to be followed. And now, in your case, you followed that procedure, in the sense that you went to the registrar, which you have to, during the vacation, and then you went to the Chief Justice. Now, it's for the Chief Justice to take a call on this. Either he decides himself, but because it's a vacation, there's no committee meeting. So, well, that's it. There's nothing more that I can say about the procedure.
Yeah,
It's not that I can say that, listen, I disagree with the Chief Justice, and I think because this fellow is written to me, therefore it's an important matter. There'll be chaos in that sense.
There's one more question there. Yes, that one.
Good evening, sir. I'm also a practitioner.
Please come forward and just.
The question is, do you think there ought to be a bench of the Supreme Court outside of Delhi as well to make it more accessible?
Well, I'll tell you, a long time back, I was in Pakistan, and Pakistan, they have their benches in different parts of the country. They have a bench in Lahore, they have a bench in Rawalpindi, they have a bench in Multan, they have a bench in Peshawar. And I asked one of the judges, who is now presently the Chief Justice of Pakistan, I said that, in a country like India, should we have benches? What is your experience? And what he told me was, he said, don't even think about it. So the experience it appears that the experience in Pakistan is not very good. And if you go by that experience, it may not be such a great idea to have benches in different parts of the country.
Yeah, there's one question right next to you. Yes, just come forward, introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, sir. So my name is Priyansha Sharma. I want to ask, sir, which judgment or case has given you maximum satisfaction as a judge? There must be something.
You protected the Taj before the UP government decides one day to demolish it.
Well, one judgment I think which has given me a lot of satisfaction actually is about the widows in Vrindavan. That I think is a judgment which has not been highlighted, so to speak. But the condition of widows in Vrindavan was pathetic. It was really, really pathetic. And I'm glad I could do something about it, and I'm very glad that the officers in charge did something about it and did something very remarkable about it. I think because those are those widows have perhaps been chucked out of their homes or whatever. Educated people, educated women. So I would rate that pretty high on my list. Yeah.
There's a young
So,
lady
good
over here.
evening.
One second. There's a lady over here. She wants to ask a question. Please come forward. Please come forward. Identify yourself.
Sunil, you're not.
Take a mic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Please identify yourself.
Hello, sir. I'm Apurva Vishwanath. You were in Pakistan last week, and one of the things that we saw with the previous Chief Justice there is how the Supreme Court's really treaded on this judicial populism, so to say. Are we seeing the danger of being there someday? Or if we already are there, do you see a way out at all?
I don't see any danger of our Supreme Court, going to that extent. So, I mean, the second part of your question doesn't arise. I don't think the Supreme Court would go to that extent. At least I hope they don't.
Activism in our court is not
No, there are no follow-up questions, please.
Yeah, you see, it's like this, which I told him also, that sometimes there is, you overstep the boundary, but then you can always come back, So, yeah, if the judiciary has overstepped, but so has the executive, so has the legislature. You can always come back.
Sir, good evening.
Mr. Tripathi has a question, I guess. Mr. Purushottam? Yep. Just give the mic to him.
Let me continue.
Who's there? Who else? Just one second.
I beg your pardon, sir. Good evening. This is Purushottam Sharma, an advocate on record in the Supreme Court, sir. I was, of course, all of us have hold you in great regard and esteem, especially with regard to the yeoman's job which your good self did with regard to the social justice bench. So I just have two questions with regard to the same. Although we have seen that a marked difference with regard to the sensitization with regard to human rights and other values in the higher judiciary, the lower judiciary for some reason is still viewed with a little bit of suspicion and apprehension by the commoners in terms of various issues which pertain to social justice, be it gender sensitization, be it access to justice and all. So what, according to your good self, would be the appropriate manner and method in trying to take this type of proactive sensitization viewpoint with regard to the lower judiciary? So the second question is, of course, with regard to the fact that the Supreme Court has been the final harbinger with regard to ensuring that there is a basic modality in trying to streamline both executive actions as well as legislations which have been promulgated by the other two arms of the government. What, according to you, would be the right method in trying to judge the judges themselves? Not necessarily on the judicial fora, because we have a very good system of the judgments, review, revision and subsequent, but with regard to the other actions also, so that the basic polity in the judicial lawmaking and the judiciary is essentially looked at without any suspicion, like what is presently being viewed at various judicial actions on the administrative levels. They are viewed with suspicion by the common masses or the lay persons. Do you think that we need a comprehensive ombudsman to also judge the judges?
Purushottam, I think Justice Lokur has forgotten the first question after he's completed his second. So
No,
I request everybody, please keep the questions very short, and no follow-up questions and single questions, please.
Yeah, well, so far as sensitization of judges is concerned, I think that's a matter for judicial education, right? I'm a great votary of judicial education. I think we need to improve our, judicial education, the academies, the judicial academies all over the country. I think they need to be more active in some of these issues. That, I think, would be the answer. And I've not frankly understood your second question.
He wanted an ombudsman, effectively, to judge the judges.
Why?
Sir, good evening. Myself, Gaurav Singh, I work in Government of Delhi. So basically, when lot of institutions of this country start with the media, after that CVC, CAG, and every institution were being compromised with the sitting government. Earlier government also used to, we had the hope in the judiciary. And everyone used to talk on the
Your question.
Question is, sir, ki, the people have a image that judiciary is on the knees in front of sitting government. So we don't know what the actual condition, but people sitting on the tea, they are talking on this, that judiciary is on knees, so where is the hope? Point is this.
Okay, you made your point. Yes. Okay, you want to answer that? The widespread impression is that that the judiciary is subservient in some form to the government, not independent.
Please change that view.
Yes, Anjali, go ahead. And then this side. Yeah.
Sir, I claim a privilege to ask you a question. So when you made the recommendation for the appointment of Justice Rajendra Menon to the Supreme Court of India, you were very much a member of the collegium. Were you aware that a Rajya Sabha committee headed by Justice Bhanumati, which included the present Attorney General of India, Mr. K.K. Venugopal, and Justice Manjula Chellur, had actually rendered a finding that he was responsible for passing an order which they said was illegal against the transfer policy of a woman sitting judge, an additional district judge of Madhya Pradesh. And speaking for myself, I would consider that a disqualification. I would like to know whether you were aware of this.
I was not. I was not.
All right, I do have a follow-up, but never mind. I'll discuss it with you personally.
Anjali, go ahead. Anjali, and then one here and one there.
No, my question is that, when
let me just tell you, one of the... okay. Yeah. No, the point that I want to make is that one of the things that we had said in the NJAC judgment...
I'm sorry, I can't name the judge. It was a case of sexual harassment at the workplace, but she's present everywhere.
Yeah.
And I will send you the link to the report of the Rajya Sabha committee where this finding has been rendered, and I do hope that there's no reconsideration of that.
Yeah, you see, the point which I wanted to make was that in the NJAC judgment, we have talked about a secretariat, One of the purposes of having a secretariat is to have information about a judge who is being considered, for appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court or as a Chief Justice or as, for the purpose of confirmation. So I believe that it is very, very important that we have a secretariat and a good, secretariat with adequate resources to, tell us, tell the collegium whatever it wants to know about a particular person. Now, I did at one point of time in March 2017, prepare some kind of a rough draft of what I thought should be a part of the secretariat or what should be the duties of the secretariat. But unfortunately, that was not taken forward. So yeah, it is important that we have a secretariat which advises the collegium on various issues.
Yes, Anjali, quickly.
Justice Lokur, some of the most progressive pronouncements on the right to information actually came from the Supreme Court and long before the law was passed. And the court held famously that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Even following the discussions that happened today, why is it that you feel that for the judiciary, that principle would not hold? Because what we are finding is that the right to information law also covers the judiciary, but when people are asking questions about the assets and liabilities of judges, they're asking questions about the correspondence between judges where there might be pressure that might be borne upon sitting judges, or they're asking about appointments using the right to information law. All of this information is being systematically denied by the courts. And in fact, there was a constitution bench which all of these matters was referred to about 9 years ago, and that bench hasn't been set up till date. So why is it that the judiciary is different?
Well, I think that the constitution bench will have to decide, The Delhi High Court has taken a view, and I think that view has been stayed by the Supreme Court, and the Constitution Bench will have to take a call on that.
But should the assets and liabilities, in your view, of judges be out in the public domain, and if someone through an RTI asks about them, they should be made available? What's your personal view?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, when I was a judge of the Delhi High Court, when I was a judge of the Supreme Court, I did disclose my assets and liabilities.
Do you think all judges should do the same in an ideal world?
In an ideal world, yes.
An ideal world is the real world, right?
The ideal world is the real world?
Should be. It should be. We should look for... Yes, the girl there. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, good evening, sir. My question is about the sealed envelopes that have been doing rounds right now, or the controversy around it. Given that you've handled sensitive cases such as Muzaffarpur, there were sealed documents that were necessary to be filed, or there were documents necessary to be filed in a sealed envelope, because it was about the witnesses, about the girls and everything. But now we also have instances such as Anand Teltumde's case, where a whole judgment by the High Court has been delivered on the basis of a sealed envelope, and it was not even given to him, and it is material incriminating him. So what is your view on sealed envelope?
Okay, you see, I don't know about this case that you're talking about. I don't know what happened in any other case. I can tell you about what my experience is and what I did while I was on the bench. in the coal bench, for example, we took reports from the CBI in a sealed cover only for the purpose of seeing that the investigation was going on in the right direction and they were not, beating about the bush. And wherever it was necessary to disclose what was there in the sealed cover, we did disclose it. It's not that we kept anything back, and none of the lawyers ever told me or told any one of us in the bench at any point of time that we were holding something back. So the purpose of the sealed cover was only to see that the investigation goes on in the right direction. Similarly, with the rapes that were committed in Muzaffarpur, again, the idea was to ensure that the investigation does not does not go in a direction which it should not. Now, during the course of the investigations, the CBI did find, things about rape and sexual abuse and so on and so forth. But that was only as a matter of fact. So that was again just to find out that, yeah, this thing has happened and the investigation is going on. But what was the nature of the sexual abuse and all that, that was not a part of the sealed cover. So as far as I'm concerned, and the bench of which I was a part or which I presided over, we looked at sealed covers only for the purposes of seeing that the investigation is being conducted in a fair and impartial manner and is not being, is not a cover-up or something.
We just have another 5 minutes, so just a couple of questions, very quickly.
Question regarding the judges' freedom of speech. Sometimes judges gives very strange remarks. Recently, a judge, High Court judge, said reduced the entire history of India into a paragraph, and it is similar to what we read on WhatsApp forwards. So, what is the responsibility or accountability of when they make such comments which have an impact on the media and on the people? So
I can't answer that question.
Please don't refrain asking from specific.
Dinesh, you've asked your one question.
No. Sir, I'm Shruti Sagar. You've been part of collegiums, and for the past 8 years, the Supreme Court has not seen a judge from the Dalit community. Now, collegium after collegium, the Supreme Court articulates the concept of social justice very well in its judicial pronouncements. But why is it that when the collegium sits for elevating people, you tend to overlook people from the marginalized communities? Do we say that for 8 years, you have not been able to find a single judge from the Dalit and Adivasi community to sit on the bench?
No, you see, seniority is one criteria, right? Now, well, at the time when I was there in the collegium, there was no judge who was senior enough or who had that requisite seniority to, be considered. You can't say that, because he's a...
No, I'm sorry. Please don't ask any follow-up questions. Please.
That is, something that I was not a member of that collegium. But you can't say that, a person because he's, say 70 or 80 or 90 or 100 in the seniority, and he happens to belong to a particular community or belongs to a particular region, therefore he should jump over everybody. That means seniority has no role, but the Supreme Court has said that seniority has a role.
He does make a good example that when now 2 judges have been appointed, overruling the collegium judgment that you took, over 30 judges have been superseded. Again, it's coming down to arbitrariness. The worry with the collegium system, which you've defended very strongly today, is there is a built-in arbitrariness to it until rules are framed in a more transparent manner.
This is I've been saying the same thing for such a long time.
Yes,
that it needs to be tweaked.
Sir, does it need to be tweaked or revamped or overhauled?
Well, okay, take out the thesaurus, whatever word you want to use.
But it needs to change. It's not. It cannot be as it is now.
It's not that it needs to change, but it needs to improve. Now.
The example of the last month, I'm trying to get my news point.
Yeah.
The example of the last month clearly suggests that the collegium system can result in an element of arbitrariness, possibly. And therefore needs, if not to be tweaked, many would say to be completely relooked at.
I don't know. What is the difference between relooking and tweaking or
No,
revisiting?
my worry with tweaking is that, it will be a small incremental change. I'm saying the changes need to be much more than incremental.
Well, according to me, tweaking does not mean a small incremental change.
So you're saying
it could be something more than a small incremental change.
Okay. Okay.
It could be something more.
Mr. Rahul Mehra, once again.
Dinesh, you had made a question. No, it's unfair to the others.
It may be interesting for you.
Okay,
It may be interesting for you. No, just let me finish this. Sir, you were in call.
Let's do it organized.
We have 3 times. District, High Court, Supreme Court. You can reduce it to 2, and the pendency will reduce at least 20%. I want your opinion on this. Reducing the right to appeal twice, not thrice.
I don't know.
Sir,
I don't know. Supposing somebody says that there should be no appeal.
Yeah, the girl there first. No, she hasn't had a chance.
Yeah, my name is Cheryl. So the in-house mechanism is silent where there's a complaint against the Chief Justice. So what, in your opinion, is the correct framework or the ideal mechanism to deal with a complaint against the Chief Justice of India?
Well, I think there should be an in-house mechanism for everybody. Every judge. It doesn't matter whether it's the Chief Justice or anybody else. There should be.
How has life changed between the between your revolt, if I may use the word revolt?
Don't.
I won't use the word revolt. Between your statements of January 2018 when Justice Deepak Mishra was the Chief Justice and now Justice Gogoi. There is a sense, I'll be honest, there's a sense of disappointment among many people who thought that Justice Gogoi, by being part of the four judges, would come as Chief Justice and would be a reformist judge. Instead, we are finding that Justice Gogoi seems to be stumbling from one controversy to another.
What do you want me to say?
Is there something about the office? Is there something about the office now that makes it necessarily controversial? Manish Chibbar wrote a very good piece in the print where he says that, we criticized Justice Deepak Mishra and then we realized that whoever succeeds him actually is subject to even more criticism.
He's present here. Mr. Chibbar is here.
Is that, I hope I've paraphrased it roughly. What he was trying to say is that, we don't know what lies next, but every Chief Justice, sir, seems to now increasingly find himself or her in some controversy. Is that the nature of the office, you think?
I don't know. When I was Chief Justice of the High Court, I don't think there was any controversy.
The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court increasingly under the scanner now?
How can I answer that?
Is the Chief Justice's role increasingly under the scanner? I think that's where she was also coming from.
I think the role of everybody is under the scanner. Every judge, every Chief Justice, everybody is under the scanner.
And they should be under the scanner in your view?
Why not?
Including the Chief Justice?
Why not?
Because we saw what happened last year, sir, when impeachment...
Regardless of what happened last year, are you trying to say that nobody should be under the scanner?
No, I'm saying everybody should be.
So I'm saying the same thing.
With a system that perhaps works more effectively to ensuring that being under the scanner ensures accountability?
Yeah, sure, why not?
You have a suggestion?
Offhand, no. Offhand, I don't have any suggestion. But yeah, well, listen, we are living in a free country. How can you say that nobody should be under a scanner or some people should not be under a scanner? Isn't that stretching things a little too far?
The reason, sir, is, and this I'm now talking as a journalist, over the last few years, we get reports about the top judge of, the Chief Justice itself, judgments being passed a day before the judge retires, people saying they knew the judgment in that particular case in advance. Now, this could be gossip. But either way, the fact that these questions are raised about the highest judicial officer in the country, does it trouble you?
Yeah, it does. It does, yeah. It does.
So you've also heard of them, that means?
Well, everybody's heard of them.
Everybody's heard of them, okay.
It's like this. If there is any allegation against a judge, it is bound to trouble everybody.
Right.
Right? And if there is substance in it, well, it is definitely a cause of concern.
Very quickly now.
Mr. Rahul Mehra has a question. Rajdeep. Mr. Rahul Mehra.
Yes, Rahul.
Good evening, sir. Sir, is it a good idea to have a succession planning for the Chief Justice of India? And should the judges be appointed on that basis?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know.
And do you think it's a good idea to have a moratorium for about 5 years post the retirement age for judges to take on these tribunals? And
listen, it depends. He asked the same question. Like I said, you have situations where you have laws. You have situations where there's an expertise. For example, okay, let me give you my example. Yeah. I've been working on the e-courts project for the last 6.5 years. And now if the Chief Justice tells me that, listen, I want you to continue, after your retirement, I want you to continue, and the government has no objection, should I tell him that forget it, I'm not doing it, yeah? So what if it helps the judiciary? So what if it helps the country? But it's a post-retirement assignment, I'm not going to take it. I don't think that's correct. So it's not, you can't generalize it. There are some where you may accept, there are some where you may not accept, there are some which by law.
Your plans post-retirement, Justice Lokur? I mean, you've got to Pakistan, there are all these fishermen and prisoners between the two countries, many of whom are in each other's jails for years. They desperately need someone who can connect possibly the judiciaries of the two countries. Would you, if tomorrow you were offered, head a tribunal that is to look into, or head a commission, which is to look into prisoners in each other's countries, would you take it up?
I would, yeah. It would certainly help the country, I would, yes.
Very good. So you're at the risk of being called anti-national, of course. But do you have any particular other goals? Any post-retirement plans?
No, nothing for the time being. Post-retirement plans in the sense that I'm not going to work with any organization, I mean government or whatever.
No government bungalow awaits.
No government bungalow awaits.
Okay. Very quickly, Dinesh.
Yes. Sir, you are party to many of the judges' appointment. So what is your take on these IB reports? Because we have seen so many people recently appointed with certain political ideology, and those who are highly democratic and liberal, they are kept out. So what is your take on this IB report?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
He's saying that judicial appointments are now being made on the basis of ideology. And those ideologies are determined by IB reports. So he claims.
At least I'm not influenced by that at all, no.
Okay, the gentleman there, very quickly. Yes, ma'am. Last question.
Rajdeep Vansi.
Yeah, okay, one this side, one this side.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sir, the way the present Chief Justice has been conducting the business, do you think another set of
I'm not
judges
commenting
will come out or should come out and talk to the press?
I'm not commenting.
Okay, now it will become a press conference. Let's leave it there. Yes, the gentleman there. I hope you're not from the media. Are you from the media?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, my name is Ranu.
We're terrible people, so don't ask. We are not supposed to ask questions. Go ahead.
The wordings that the NJAC judgment used with respect to collegium and the reform that is required is a glasnost and a perestroika. Why was the memorandum of procedure not pursued so enthusiastically, as much enthusiasm was shown while calling for these changes?
Not pursued enthusiastically by whom?
By the judges.
I just mentioned that there was something like 11,000 pages, and different points of view, some taking this side, some taking completely the opposite side. And that's one. So we don't have that kind of time for this. The second thing is the Attorney General said, and which is what had happened in the earlier judge's case, that the memorandum of procedure was drafted by the government. So why should we take on the job which should have been done by the government?
Okay, there are those young people, the girl and the boy. Please ask short, quick questions.
Evening, sir. Just a quick question. Though the Constitution allows it, an academic has never been appointed to the Supreme Court as a judge. Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Yes, the girl had a question. That's it? Great, wonderful.
Just 1 second.
Yes.
Senior members of the bar have any questions,
go ahead.
please, after this. Yeah, Mr. Ashok.
My lord, my question is, all the judges, I think everybody admits that Supreme Court is not right because
First of all, I don't think you should address me as my lord.
My lord, yes.
No, you
my
should
lord.
not.
Anyway, my question is very simple. Many judges, many CJIs, I think my lord also hold this view that Supreme Court is not right because it is right. It is right because it is final. Many times it happens, same set of evidence, same CRPC, same constitution, High Court gives different judgment and Supreme Court reverses it. And every time it is not right. My lord would agree to this, that every time it is not right. There are cases when even Supreme Court was wrong and High Court was right. And Justice Joseph, in fact, all his farewell functions, he talked of that sixth sense. Justice Lohati also talks of this divine power. And our Article 51A also talks of that spirit of inquiry. So are we doing something to improve spirit of inquiry for Supreme Court judges or so that they don't go wrong? the chances of doing their wrong are minimized. Are we doing something on that spirit? After all, it is constitution.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
every judge agrees. I think Milord also agrees that sometimes Supreme Court is wrong. So are we doing
Well,
something
we
on
did,
that?
We did have a retreat for the Supreme Court judges. I think it was a 2-day or a 3-day retreat, I'm not very sure, in the National Judicial Academy in 2017, I think. So, yeah, and before that also there was another retreat, so this was the second retreat. But yes, I think these kind of retreats should be more often. They should be.
So let me ask you one very selfish question. At the Editors Guild, there's been this huge debate of going to the Supreme Court to strike down criminal defamation. Do you believe, you know, it's a law which has been struck off the statutes in Britain, where it originally came much, I mean, we could even go into sedition. Do you believe the time has come to review some of these laws and strike them off?
Yeah, of course. Of course. There's so many laws that need to be...
Criminal defamation? Do you believe India should have a criminal defamation law?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Sedition? In its present form as it exists, which can be
Well, I think-
a colonial law, needs to be reviewed, revised?
I think the Supreme Court has, said a lot about sedition and what constitutes sedition and what does not.
But at the end of the
You
day,
know?
look at the way it's used, sir.
Yeah, but then look at the way murder is used. You know, sometimes somebody commits a murder and he's found it's not a murder. So that's a matter of interpretation.
But should it be reviewed or not?
It should be, yeah, of course, why not?
Okay, so criminal defamation struck off, right? I wish you were the judge in that judgment. The person who gave the judgment later on became Chief Justice. That's why perhaps you didn't become Chief Justice, which is another reason for another day. But give a very big hand to Justice Lokur for speaking candidly. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I just before we have the vote of thanks by Aparna Bhatt, I would just call upon two practicing advocates, Nehmat and Rudrakshi, both huge fans of Justice Lokur, read most of his judgments. Nehmat, please come and just give a small memento of appreciation to, it's Rudrakshi and also to Rajdeep. Also, like to thank Rajdeep.
Justice Lokur just told me that the most important question that I had to ask is why was the recommendation of December 12th not sent? Since you're in a thing and since you've asked me that, you tell us then. I don't know. You don't know?
I don't know.
But that's what you told me when I asked you that earlier also. I said, when I asked you that, why was the recommendation of December 12th not uploaded on your resolution?
I don't know, and I said that I'm disappointed.
You said you're disappointed, but I also asked you, is it true that you asked the Chief Justice the next day as to why it should be put up?
I did not.
Okay, so you're effectively saying that you have never been, you still do not know the reasons why that particular recommendation of the collegium was not uploaded. You have no idea as of today. None whatsoever. Okay. No. And it leaves you disappointed, it leaves you let down. I'm trying to look for a stronger word than disappointed.
Disappointed.
Disappointed. Okay, good enough. Thank you very much.